I'm Aaron from Columbia.
And I'm Phil from PRC Taping.
And today we're going to go over how to use the automatic taper to fill your joints. Before you start with the taper, you want to check a couple things. You want to check that your brake is adjusted nicely. You can do that by adjusting this lever right here. If you push it in, you'll have it where the taper has no brake on it and it's running in neutral. If you pull it back towards you, that's where you'll adjust your brake setting. You don't want to go too tight where you're working against yourself. What I like to have it set at is where the taper will run forward, and if you try and pull back on it, the teeth will not move backwards. So the brake is doing its job, but it runs nice and loose. On your taper you have your clutch and your clutch release. Right now it's in neutral, so it's set for fill. If you release your clutch release off of the release disc, you're in gear. You can see it's advancing it and it's rolling. You want to put your clutch release in so it's in neutral, and that's how you set it to fill mode. So now we're going to apply the tape to the taper. First, what you want to do is you want to adjust your brake setting. We've added this recently, so it may not be on every taper, but what you can do is rather than having your tape wheel freewheel, you can adjust it to a nice tension that you like so that the tape doesn't roll away on you. So set your tension, then apply your tape wheel. Now that your tape wheel's on, you want to roll your tape on the opposite side of the post and then turn it so that the curved side is facing outwards, so away from the taper. Bring it up to the tape guide, insert it into the tape guide, and roll it up to the needle. Using the taper sleeve, you're going to feed your tape up. So pull the taper sleeve up, it's going to actuate this arm which pushes your needle cam up. So when you push the sleeve up, you advance the tape, and when you pull the sleeve down, you pull on this chain which cuts the tape. Now that we have the tape on and our taper set to neutral, we're ready to fill it with mud. We're going to take this valve and we're going to insert it into the gooseneck. And your taper sleeve is going to rest inside these two arms on the gooseneck. You should be able to walk away and leave your taper there. When filling your taper, you want to make sure that you keep your fingers inside the taper so that you feel when the piston gets to the back end. Because if you over pump it, the piston could break or shoot out the bottom. Take the handle of the pump and start pumping. Now that your plunger's at the top, your taper's full, you're ready to take it off. Pull the clutch release off, push your cam down, and make sure that you don't have any play backwards in your clutch. Make sure that that wheel is all the way in front of the tooth. Otherwise you'll skip and have dry spots. When you're new to the taper and you haven't run it a lot, you're going to need to prime it almost every time you hit it on the wall, because what's going to happen is you're going to be running a little bit slow and your mud's going to be slumping down. How to prime it? Without the tape, you place your top wheel on the wall and roll it a little bit, and you can see the mud coming out. That's priming it. That gets rid of any air you may have in your tube. When you start on the wall, you want to have a few inches of tape ready to go so that you're not starting from right there. You want it to actually be a little bit on the top wheel. Place the tape onto your seam, run it down the wall. Stop about 3 inches from where you want to finish. Completely stop, then make your cut with the sleeve. Place your tape in. There you go. You're going to prime your taper without the tape. Get a little bit of mud advance there. Advance your tape a few inches. Run it up the wall. Once again, stop right before you want to finish. Make a cut when you're completely stopped. Apply your tape. So once your tape's applied, you need to wipe it down with a wipe down knife. Phil's using an 8-inch knife here. Get all the mud spread out from underneath. Make sure there's no air pockets underneath, dry spots. As you can see here, out of requests by me, Phil did not prime the taper. The mud had time to slump. We've been standing there with the taper in between, and you get a big dry spot there. So that's why I always stress priming the taper first. Make sure there's no slumpage inside your tube. One of the main things people do when they're new to the automatic taper is called double cutting. So what that means is your tape is moving in here, you don't come to a complete stop, you actually cut the tape with the cutter, but the tape is still moving and it cuts back and leaves shreds of tape inside of your taper. That causes it to jam up. So how he's going to double cut, he's going to leave it, he's going to tape on the wall. When he gets to the end, instead of stopping and cutting, he's going to cut while taping. See that? Now your tape's been cut on an angle. What's happened there is it cut on an angle because we were still moving. What we've done now is a shard of tape has gotten into there. You get enough of those, it's going to build up in your cutter system here and not allow your tape to move up. And you're going to get it jamming and tearing like that. You got to clean those little shards out just by pulling it out a few times. Make sure that your cutter block comes all the way back out again. Now you can restart. But this is one thing you really want to avoid, and you can avoid that very easily by stopping when you cut. Another mistake people make, which causes dry spots, is hand advancing your taper. You have your clutch moving forwards, but then it's dropping back all that way. If you advance it on the wall with your top wheel, you see it stays engaged with the clutch the whole time. There's no room for it to move backwards. That will not cause a dry spot. We're going to run the taper on the wall after just hand advancing it and show you what can happen. If you pull that down, you see you've got your dry spot there. That's from that wheel running backwards. That's why you want to advance your tape wheels on the wall rather than with your hand. That can also happen if you don't prime it at all. Okay, we went over how if you don't prime it properly that you're going to get dry spots in your mud. This is another thing that can happen. When you fill your taper, sometimes your wheel on your clutch does not go all the way in front of your tooth when you take it off with the mud pump. That's why I always suggest to try rolling it backwards first. You can see I clicked it back. That's going to leave a dry spot. Once you've clicked it back once, it should be locked into place. Now it's not going to do that anymore. So you always got to watch when you fill your taper that your clutch wheel here is right in front of the sprocket tooth. Can't move backwards. The other reason why you can get a dry spot is if your brake isn't on tight enough and your wheel can actually roll backwards a little bit. You see that? That's going to cause mud slumpage. Even if your brake feels like it's on but it's a little loose, sometimes you can have it roll back a couple teeth and that's going to cause a little dry spot. So the three things you want to check is your clutch is engaged, your wheel brake is on properly, and that you prime it on the wall. We showed you how to run the taper on the flats on the walls. Now we're going to show you how to run the taper on the flats on the ceilings. All the same rules apply except for that we're going to show you a few more tricks and tips for how to run it on the ceiling. When you're running the taper on the ceiling flats, you want to make sure that you don't have your top wheel perfectly flat on the ceiling. That's going to cause the mud to be perfectly flat underneath, which is going to cause the tape to fall down afterwards. What you actually want to do is run it on a bit of an angle. So you're going to have a dominant wheel, side of the wheel, running into the wall, cutting into it, and then one side lifted off of the wall. So unfortunately for Phil, we've asked him to do it the wrong way on the ceiling flat. So that means he's not going to use his creaser wheel, and he's also going to run it completely flat with his top wheel on the ceiling. So that's an example of how not to tape a ceiling. What happened was, because both wheels were on the ceiling, you have even mud pressure underneath the whole piece of tape. What you want is actually an inconsistent mud pressure underneath the tape. That's why you run it at an angle. that helps it glue up. Plus you get more pressure on one side. And then when you wipe it down with a knife, it all evens in afterwards. You're going to use your creaser wheel on the ceiling, and you're going to run it on the angle. So you can see here, that's where you had the pressure, and that's where you didn't. But because of that, it's allowing it to stick up there without falling down. Your creaser wheel is an added tool for when you're doing ceilings. How it works is you pull the trigger down at the bottom of the taper. It applies pressure onto the wall, so it assists your top wheel in applying pressure to the tape while you're running it down the wall. Now we're going to run our inside angles. In order to do so properly, we need to advance the tape all the way to the edge of the creaser wheel so that we can allow for a little bit of tape drag. You want the tape to be primed as well. You don't want it to be bare of mud. You want some mud on it as well. When starting a vertical angle, you want the taper almost parallel to the ground. You're going to pull on the creaser trigger, and you're going to work your way up the wall. You want to go at a nice pace. Don't fight the taper on this, or you're going to get tape drag. You want the taper to do the work, not yourself. Make the cut 3 inches from the top and set your tape. I'm going to explain this one more time because a lot of you have questions about taping the corners and drag. So you want to advance your tape to the edge of the creaser wheel. Have mud on it. Have your taper parallel to the ground. Engage your creaser wheel. Work your way up. Don't push too hard on the taper. Don't fight it. Let the trigger and the taper do the work. Go to the top, cut, and you're good. If you're doing all these steps and you're still having a problem with tape drag, you better check your mud consistency, because sometimes if it's too thick, you're going to be fighting the corner. When running your ceiling angles, same as when you're running your vertical angles, you want to advance the tape to the creaser wheel, put it in the corner, run it, but don't push too hard. Let the taper do the work. When running closets, a trick that you can use is to run the tape up halfway in an easy corner, then move it over to an awkward corner and run it the rest of the way up. That way you don't have to hand tape the closet. For the removable taper cap, to take it off, you pull on the key ring to pull the pin out. Make sure you put the pin in a proper place so you don't lose it. Then put a finger down each slot of the top wheel and pull back on the cap. Then you can remove it for cleaning or changing cables. To put the cap back on, there's a shim underneath the cam here that you want to put between this pulley wheel and the push rod. You're going to put the pin down into the head, place the shim between the pulley and the push rod, drop the cap in, push it all the way down, then push down where it says Columbia. The cap is a press fit, so when you put it in, if you don't put enough pressure on it, the pin won't go through properly and it could leak out of here. If you feel like you need to put a little more pressure on it, you can use a rubber mallet, give it a tap. It's not going to hurt anything.
Hey guys, how's it going? The Columbia automatic taper is a fast way to get your tapes on, and it's actually really easy to run once you get used to it. This is by far my favorite tool to use, and once you've mastered it, it'll be yours too.
Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something today. I'd like to thank Phil from PRC Taping for helping out, and visit our YouTube channel for more videos like this.